Throughout human history, moments of unimaginable cruelty have shaped the course of nations, cultures, and entire civilizations. Among the most horrifying of these are genocides, systematic attempts to annihilate entire groups based on their ethnicity, religion, or identity. Genocide is not just mass killing, it is the calculated erasure of people, their lives, their stories, their culture. In this video, we explore 10 of the deadliest genocides in recorded history. Not to sensationalize tragedy, but to remember, to understand, and to ensure that history never repeats itself. Let us begin. The Holocaust remains the most extensively documented genocide in modern history. Under Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime, over 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, alongside millions of others, including Romani people, disabled individuals, Poles, Soviets, and homosexuals. The Nazis developed a terrifyingly efficient system of extermination ghettos, forced labor camps, and industrialized killing centers like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. Victims were dehumanized, marked with numbers, starved, experimented upon, and executed en masse. What makes the Holocaust so chilling is not just the scale, but the cold, bureaucratic nature of its execution. It was genocide as policy, executed with chilling precision by a modern state. In just 100 days, between April and July of 1994, an estimated 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu were slaughtered by ethnic Hutu extremists in Rwanda. Sparked by the assassination of President Juvenal Habyarimana, long-standing tensions exploded into a frenzy of violence. Militias known as Interahamwe carried out systematic killings using machetes, clubs, and even household tools. Radio broadcasts incited hate and guided killers. What's most tragic is how the international community watched and did almost nothing. United Nations peacekeepers were ordered not to intervene. It was a preventable genocide, but the world failed. During World War I, the Ottoman government targeted its Christian Armenian minority, accusing them of collaborating with the Russians. Between 1 and 1.5 million Armenians were killed through mass executions, forced marches, and starvation. Men were executed en masse. Women and children were forced to walk through the Syrian desert, where countless died of hunger and disease. Many were raped, tortured, or sold into slavery. To this day, the Armenian Genocide remains a source of political controversy. Turkey denies the term genocide, despite overwhelming historical evidence, but the truth endures in the memories of survivors and their descendants. When the Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, took control of Cambodia in 1975, they envisioned a radical agrarian society. To achieve it, they executed intellectuals, teachers, doctors, and anyone associated with the old government. Nearly 2 million people, a quarter of the population, died from starvation, forced labor, torture, and execution. Even wearing glasses or speaking a foreign language could be a death sentence. The regime turned the country into a network of prisons and killing fields. Tuol Sleng, a former school-turned-torture center, became a symbol of the regime's cruelty. Pol Pot died in 1998 without ever facing trial, but the ghosts of the genocide remain in Cambodia's soil and in the hearts of its people. The Holodomor, meaning death by hunger, was a man-made famine orchestrated by Joseph Stalin's Soviet government. Millions of Ukrainians were starved to death as the state seized grain and food supplies to crush nationalist sentiment and enforce collectivization. Entire villages were left to die. Grain was confiscated. Borders were sealed to prevent escape. Estimates of the death toll range from 3 to 7 million. While debate continues over whether it constitutes genocide, many scholars and governments have recognized it as such due to the deliberate targeting of Ukrainians. The Holodomor is a silent genocide, one without gas chambers or bullets, but no less deadly. Following the breakup of Yugoslavia, ethnic tensions erupted in Bosnia. Serb forces under the leadership of Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic launched a campaign of ethnic cleansing against Bosniak Muslims. The most infamous atrocity occurred in Srebrenica in July 1995, where over 8,000 Muslim men and boys were executed in just a few days, the worst massacre in Europe since World War II. Civilians were systematically tortured, raped, and expelled from their homes. The International Criminal Tribunal later declared the acts genocide, and top leaders were convicted of war crimes. It served as a grim reminder that genocide could still happen in modern Europe under the eyes of the world. Long before the Holocaust, Imperial Germany carried out a brutal genocide in what is now Namibia. After a rebellion by the Herero and Nama people, German forces under General Lothar von Trotha responded with extermination orders. Tens of thousands were killed or driven into the desert, where they died of thirst and starvation. Survivors were placed in concentration camps, forced to work under inhumane conditions. It's one of the earliest genocides of the 20th century and often forgotten. In recent years, Germany has acknowledged its responsibility and taken steps toward restitution, though many argue that more needs to be done. Following European colonization, the indigenous populations of the Americas suffered a catastrophic collapse. Disease, warfare, enslavement, and forced displacement decimated entire civilizations. From the Aztecs and Incas to the native tribes of North America, millions died. While not always systematic in the modern sense, many policies, such as forced removals, assimilation programs, and massacres, amounted to genocidal acts: the Trail of Tears, the Wounded Knee Massacre, the residential school systems. These were tools of cultural and physical extermination. This genocide is ongoing in its legacy, in poverty, loss of land, and cultural erosion that indigenous communities still fight to reverse. In the Darfur region of Western Sudan, government-backed militias known as Janjaweed waged a campaign of ethnic cleansing against non-Arab populations. Villages were burned, civilians raped, and hundreds of thousands were killed. Over 2 million were displaced. While the conflict has faded from headlines, violence continues. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir on charges of genocide, the first sitting head of state to face such charges. Yet justice remains elusive. For many in Darfur, the nightmare has never ended. In 2014, the extremist group ISIS swept through northern Iraq and targeted the Yazidi people, a small religious minority with ancient roots. Thousands of Yazidi men were executed. Women and girls were kidnapped, sold into sexual slavery, and abused in a systematic campaign of terror. Children were indoctrinated or murdered. The United Nations has officially declared the acts genocide. Survivors continue to share their stories, seeking justice, recognition, and healing. Even today, mass graves are being uncovered, grim proof of the horrors that occurred in recent years, not centuries ago. Genocide is not only a tragedy of numbers, it is a tragedy of names, of stories never told, of futures never lived. Each one represents a failure of politics, of humanity, of international resolve. But remembering them is more than grief. It is resistance, it is warning, it is hope, that by confronting the darkest chapters of our past, we prevent them from repeating in our future. Because genocide does not begin with gas chambers, it begins with hate, with silence, with the belief that some lives matter less than others. So let us speak, let us learn, let us remember, because forgetting is the first step toward repeating